All right, ladies. So what we're going to go ahead and show you is we're going to show you the first 5 of 7 knots that you girls are going to be learning how to do here when it comes to setting up a shelter, when it comes to just knot tying in general, and a couple of the basic knots here, and we're also going to include a bonus knot here as well. It's not really a knot, but it's a way to actually put away your rope or your paracord. So in this case, we're using 550 paracord. It's in black. And the first knot that we're going to show you ladies how to do, obviously, is the most basic knot, and this knot is used for when it comes to when it comes basically to shoe tying or any other knot in general. And the first knot that we're going to do here is what's called the overhand knot, and the overhand knot is very simple. So take the end of your rope, find a piece of your line, and pull. One end goes over the rope, and you just pull, and voila, you have yourself your overhand knot. Very simple, very easy. The next knot that we're going to show you ladies how to do is what's called the arbor knot. And I also call this knot the crybaby knot, and I'll explain why in a minute. But the way you make the arbor knot is you want to pull out a little bit of your line, want to make yourself a loop, and then you're going to pinch at the top of the line, and you're going to go over towards your end line here, your tail. You're going to make a nice loop. As you can see, both lines are still together, and then it's going to go inside, and voila, you got yourself your arbor knot. Now, why do I call this knot the crybaby knot? And well, the reason why I call this knot the crybaby knot is because as it gets tighter, the problem is with this particular knot is that when it gets tighter, it actually causes the knot to get more tight and you can't loosen it. So if you plan to use your rope for something else later on down the line, then you have to really dig into the knot to get it unloosed. So as you can see, I did not actually tie it this tight. So now I can go ahead and take it off. But if you attach this to a tree, or if you attach this to your vehicle, as you pull tighter on the rope, it will get more tight, and it will get very hard to get out. And that's why I call it the crybaby knot, because a lot of people who do this knot, if they get super frustrated about it, what they'll do is they'll take their knife and they'll cut the knot off and just use the rest of the rope. So the knot that we are now going to show you how to do next is what's called the bowline. And the bowline is a knot that I use to basically replace the arbor knot. And the bowline is very easy. So I'm going to hold on to the end of my paracord and I'm going to make a loop. So there's my loop. Next, the end of my paracord is going to go through the loop, and then it's going to go under the rope, and then through the loop again, and voila, you have yourself a bowline. And the bowline is perfect for different types of applications when it comes to knot. Now what I can do is I can go ahead and put my rope through my bowline and make a lasso. So in case I want to tie something up or tie somebody up, just kidding. And then the other thing I can also do is that this is actually perfect for shelter building. And that's what we're going to show you next when it comes to setting up this line to make a ridge line. So we have our tree right here. And what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and put our rope through this tree, or at least around the tree. So we have our rope. Now there's one or two things that I could do. There's one or three things we can do. We can either go ahead and pull the line all the way through and go to the other side, to the other tree. The other thing we can also do is that if we have a carabiner, we can attach the carabiner to the end of our bowline and then connect it to the line and pull it nice and tight. But for this scenario though, we're going to use what's called a marlin spike hitch. And for the marlin spike hitch, basically what you need is a piece of wood. So we have our wood right here in my pocket. And we're going to put a little bit of our line through our bowline loop, and then we're going to go ahead and attach the stick to the line. And as you can see, when I pull on it, it's going to go on it nice and tight. And the beauty about the marlin spike hitch is that if I'm in a hurry to leave, I can just go ahead and loosen it up a little bit, pull it out, voila, it's all done. So let's do that again. Rope's going to go around the tree. We're going to put a little bit of our rope. We're going to take our stick. And then you can go ahead, put it nice and tight. Make it nice and tight. Now, there's a couple of different ways you can use sticks. You can either, so when it comes to finding a stick, you want to make sure that the stick is strong and you cannot break it with your hands. If you can break a stick with your thumb or by holding your hand and breaking it with your thumb, then that means it's not strong enough. If you can snap it into with both hands, it's not strong enough. But if you don't snap it into, or if it's nice and thick, then this is a good stick to have. So this one's a good one to have. So now I'm going to go ahead and take my line here, and I'm going to go over to another tree. We want to make sure that we have a tree where you ladies can see exactly what I'm working with here. So we're going to go over, whoops, sorry about that. We're going to go over to this tree right here. Actually, we're going to go over this tree. Going to make sure we have our line. And again, we're using paracord, but these knots can be used with any type of rope. We're going to throw our line over this tree, and we're going to come over. So now what we're going to do here is we're going to go ahead and create what's called a trucker's hitch. So to create the trucker's hitch, I'm going to loosen my line a little bit, and I'm going to make a band right here. So I'm going to grab my line. My right hand is on top of my rope. This is my dominant hand. And then I'm going to twist and go over. Now I have a loop right here, and I'm going to pull this guy right here to make a small loop. So now what I can do is I can pull this line through here, and I can pull it nice and taut toward the tree. As you can see, this line's getting nice and tight. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over my trucker's hitch. I'm going to put a loop, and I'm going to put my rope here. Oops, got to make sure that it's nice and taut. I'm going to pinch right here. And then I can go ahead and tie it. And voila, you've got yourself a very nice ridge line. What is up, my fellow YouTubers? John with SoCal Outdoor Adventure. It's great to be back with you. So as you may have saw, we had a little bit of a different introduction in today's video. So today's video, we are going to complete on our series on the basic knots, which we're going to go ahead and include 3 more basic knots today. And then we're also going to be doing, showing you guys some of the other knots that we use in the camping survival scenario when it comes to camping outdoors. So these are going to be some additional knots that you can learn on your own, and these knots as well are basically going to be a surprise. So stick around, this is going to be a lot of fun. So this is going to be pretty much everything that you need to go ahead and help you set up a basic tarp shelter. And we're going to show you how to set up 2 different tarp shelters with these knots, and that's going to be both a A-frame shelter as well as a lean-to shelter. Now, in case you're wondering, an A-frame shelter is where the shelter's going to come like this, like a roof of a house. That's your A-frame shelter. A lean-to shelter is where you take one end of the frame away and you have the other frame. So we're going to show you how to do both of these shelters using the first 5 knots that we talked about, and the first 4 knots we talked about, my apologies, and then we're going to show you what it's like to use the other 3 knots. Now, for these other 3 knots, we're going to need to go ahead and do some cutting of some of our materials in order for us to make these knots make sense here. And the reason why we need to do that is because for this particular system that we're going to be building here today, we have to have a couple of different sizes of knots and loops. So the materials that you're going to need to go ahead and make these knots, obviously first thing you're going to need is either paracord or bank line or rope, whatever rope you want to use. Personally, I like to use either paracord or bank line when it comes to knots, because paracord and bank line is a little bit lighter to use. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this paracord here for my for the mainstream line for the shelter system. And then in my belt kit, in case you're wondering why I'm not wearing my belt kit, I took it off because it's easier to sit on a table when the belt kit's off. I'm going to use bank line. Now, in case you guys are wondering the difference between bank line versus paracord, paracord has an outer shell. So if you can see that,
there's a little burn mark right here. And what's going to happen with this is that it's going to fray if you don't patch it up. So what you would do, we'll discuss more about how that works, but then when you cut the paracord, you have these small little strands of rope. I'm going to go ahead and pull a little bit of this out, and I'll show you exactly what that's going to look like in just a moment. Bank line, on the other hand, is not like that whatsoever. It's a single strand of rope, but this bank line is very, very strong and very tough. So this is what we're going to use. So we're going to use the bank line to make our loops, and we're going to use paracord for our main line, taut line as a shelter system. So you're going to need those materials, or if you want to use paracord for both, that's fine. You're also going to need your tarp shelter, which is this guy right here. You're also going to need some tent stakes, or if you want to carve tent stakes out of wood, you can. You're also going to need a multi-tool or some type of a cutting tool like a knife or a pair of scissors. And you're going to need something to make fire, so either a ferro rod, some matches, or if you have a lighter with you, you can definitely use a lighter for this particular job. Now, before we get started here, let's take a quick moment to talk about camp safety, especially since we are doing this for our Girl Scout troops as well as other kids. Be sure to read, understand, and follow all the safety instructions that come with your camping gear and your equipment. Knowing how to use your camping gear and your equipment properly can help greatly reduce the risk of personal injury. And always remember, if you are under the age of 18, do remember that adult supervision for using cutting tools and fire is required. So let's go ahead and get started. So what we're going to do first is we're going to go ahead and move some of the materials that we're not going to use. So again, we're going to use the paracord for our main taut line. We have our tarp, so the tarp's going to go over here, and the tent stakes. Now I did mention I did want to show you what the inside of the paracord looks like. So I'm going to go ahead, take a small piece, I'm going to cut it. So as you can see, when you cut away the paracord from when you cut a piece of the paracord away from the main cordage, as you can see, you'll see these little white strands come out of the paracord. And what it is that if the other end of the paracord is currently burnt. So if I cut this end off, I can pull these little strands out, and one of the benefits with paracord is that these little strands can actually work very well for fishing line. So if you need something to go fishing, you want to get some food, you got yourself a way to get fish. And then with the other end of our cordage, I'm going to take a match, and the wind's blowing, so I want to try to get this done as soon as I can. And then we're just going to burn the end until it gets nice and charred. And this will help seal up the cordage, so that way we can still continue to use it. And then what you want to go ahead and do, if you have an adult with you, the adult should be doing this. Take your fingers, a little bit of spit. Keep your finger nice and moist, and then pull up on it to seal it. And then voila. So now I can still go back and use this cordage for my main taut line. But this is basically what paracord looks like when you pull the covering off of it, as you can see. Okay, now what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to go ahead and cut our rope. We're going to cut our bank line here to the lengths that we need. The first thing you want to go ahead and do with your bank line, you're going to hold the bank line between this finger and this finger, your middle finger and your fourth finger. You're going to go all the way up to your shoulder. So what I'm going to go ahead and do, just to make this easier on myself, is I'm going to go ahead and pull out kind of what I need, and there should be enough. And if it isn't, I can always just pull more for my roll here. And FYI, this is about, I think it's roughly about maybe 100 or 200 feet worth of bank line. So I got plenty to last me for quite a long time. So again, We're going to go ahead and cut. We're going to go ahead and put a rope between our fingers, and then we're going to put arm down and going to go up to our shoulder, and I'm going to make a bend in my rope so I can cut it. That's one. We need one more. So same thing again. Whoops. Make sure you get a good grip on the rope there. Sometimes the sucker can come out on you when you least expect it. There we go. So here's our other bend. Now we got our 2 pieces of rope cut, our long pieces. Now we're going to make a total of four short pieces. Now for the short pieces, same technique, except this time instead of going up to the top of your shoulder, you're going to go to the inside of your arm. So here's one. Now what I can go ahead and do is I can put my lines together. I should have done this with the other one. I didn't think of it, but that's okay. And I can just cut them to the exact same length. And would you look at that? I just have a little bit of paracord left, a little bit of the bank line left, that perhaps maybe I can use for maybe something else. I don't know. You never know. You never want to waste your materials. You want to try to keep as much of it as you can. I mean, if it's a good size length of rope or paracord or whatever you have, you always want to make sure you hold on to it because you never know. It could be used for something. So now that we have our rope cut, we don't need our cutting tool. And this is a Leatherman Wave, in case you're wondering. Now what we're going to do is we're going to make what's called fisherman's knots. Now with the fisherman's knots, the way that it works, one end is going to go over one side of the rope, the other end is going to go over the other side. And then all you're going to do is you're going to make an overhand knot. So here's one. Here's our second one. And then what you can do, so these are your fisherman's knots. So now all I can do is I can just pull it together and voila. Nice and taut. This is not going anywhere. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to go ahead and finish setting these guys up, and I'll bring you back when we get ready to set up the tarp shelter. Alright, so far so good. So as of right now, we are setting up our ridge line here to go ahead and have our tarp shelter. Now as you can see, we're using the same type of techniques as what we did when we first did the demonstration, and that is we have a ball line hitch to start us off with. We're using a piece of wood as our toggle. We have a nice taut ridge line going all the way down to the end of our line here, and it's nice and tight. So now what we're going to do is we're going to show you guys how to set up the tarp shelter using the knots that we just did, as well as a few other knots. Alright, so one of the bonus knots we're going to show you guys how to use is going to be what is known as the Prusik knot. Now the Prusik knot is perfect for scenarios where if you want to move pieces of wood out of the way, or if you need to pull materials away from another location. So using the large fisherman knot that we created earlier, what we're going to go ahead and do, the rope is going to go behind the wood, and then the knot of the fisherman's knot is going to go right through the loop, and we're going to pull, and voila, you've got yourself a Prusik knot. Let's show that again. Simple and easy. Now, if you have a scenario where the rope is opened, What you can go ahead and do is, as you're pulling on the wood, the rope is obviously going to lose tension. So what you can do at the end of the rope, even though this is already tied, you can tie an overhand knot to keep the rope nice and taut up against the wood when using the Prusik knot. And we're also going to show you how another way the Prusik knot is also used when setting up a shelter. So let's go ahead and get the tarp, and we'll show you how to use the other knots. I'm not sure what type of bugs these are, but they're really annoying. Alright, so we now have our tarp set up, but as you can see though, the wind is blowing pretty decently right now, and it's kind of a good thing, but it's also an annoying thing, just because it makes kind of working and kind of doing this a little bit harder for me, but that's okay. So now what we're going to go ahead and do with our knots, with our loops here, is we're going to make what is called a Prusik knot. Now the Prusik knot is a locking knot. The objective of the Prusik knot is to allow us to keep the shelter nice and taut to our ridge line. So we're going to take one of our long loops. I'm going to move the camera into position. Right here. So now what I'm going to do is, again, I'm going to drape the open hole over my line, and I'm going to put my knot through it. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a series of loops inside. And voila, you have your Prusik knot. Now what I can do is I can pull the Prusik knot closer to my shelter here. And I can stick the rope through the toggle, the metal part of my tarp. And then what I'm going to use is I'm going to take a green stick, and I'm going to stick my stick into the loop. Now I can pull it nice and taut to the ridge line. See that? So I've gone ahead and pull it nice and taut to my ridge line. So now I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing to the other side, and we'll bring you right back. Alright, so now that we've got the tarp pretty much set up now with the Prusik knots, now what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to go ahead and use these smaller loops that we made and attach them to the grommet points of our tarp shelter. Now, normally in most cases, if you have small enough tent stakes, they can go through these grommets, but at the same time, eventually over time, they're going to ruin the stakes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick the small end, the end of my fisherman's loop knot, and my fisherman's loop in here, and I'm going to make another lark's head knot. Then what I can do is I can take my tent stake, put it through the loop, oops, as long as it stays put, and then put it into the ground. And I'm also going to do the same thing with the other end of my tarp. Now, Grant Now, one thing I will say, and granted, I'll have to come back and talk to you about that one in just a moment. Now, what I could have done is I could have just stuck in the rope through the toggle, through the grommet, and basically just left it connected to the nut. But this is going to be a more secure way of tying down the tarp shelter. So now what we're going to do is we got 2 more loops left. I need 2 more 10 stakes. We'll be able to finish off this shelter. So now on the other side, I'm going to do the same thing with the remaining loops. So thanks to our fisherman's knots and the lark's head knot, we now have an A-frame shelter.
So there's our original tarp shelter, still currently set up. And this is our ridge line. This is the new ridge line I put up. Now, can you spot the differences with this ridge line versus the one that we originally set up? I'll give you a moment to look at it. Did you spot the differences? If not, allow me to explain. First and foremost, obviously the one big difference that you're going to see is that this ridge line is attached to a tree that actually goes kind of down the hill. And this is actually going to be a very unsafe position to set up a tarp shelter, because your head would have to be on this side, so that way the blood doesn't rush down your head when you're sleeping at night. Now, the other thing about this ridge line here is that you'll notice that this was set up differently versus how the other ridge line is set up with the current tarp setup. And that is, this ridge line right now has a carabiners. Now, the first carabiner is connected to our small, to the small bowline knot. And then we have our proof stick knots with the fisherman's knots And attached to this are 2 other carabiners. And what these carabiners are going to do is that if the tarp shelter has grommets, so like that particular shelter right there has grommets, then instead of using sticks, I can go ahead and attach the carabiners to the grommets, pull it taut, and then it'll keep me nice and protected. And with the carabiner now on the ridgeline, this also gives me a quick release to basically release the ridgeline and to put it away a lot faster and a lot quicker. Now the way that this would be put away is that what I can do, I'll go ahead and detach that end first. Then what I'll do is I'll move my Prusik knots towards the main carabiner, and I'll do this, and I'll make a figure-8 loop to put this back together. So I'll show you that later on in the video. So now, and so basically what this is just a quick release system setup. So now I can use the carabiners to disconnect the tarp, put the tarp away, and then I can take my ridge line off the tree and put it away, and then get out quickly if I need to leave in a hurry. So now that we got this done, let's go back to our other shelter setup, and let's show you how to do a lean-to shelter.
So now what we're going to do is we're going to now set up our lean-to shelter. Now the difference with a lean-to shelter versus an A-frame shelter is, again, it's only going to be a one-sided shelter system. So what we're going to go ahead and do is we've gone ahead and removed the tent stakes as well as the bank line from the first 2 ends of our tarp here. So now what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to pull our tarp back. And now we're going to go ahead and use our Prusik loops again, and we're going to put it through our grommet hole. I'm going to take a stick. I'm going to use a different stick here for this one. And we're going to pull it a little bit taut. We don't want it too taut, not yet. So now we're going to go to the other side and do the same thing. Now the one thing about this tarp setup though is that there is no middle grommet, so that's the only problem here. Now what I could go ahead and do if I wanted to is I could change the tarp the other direction and make it go long ways, so that way it'll be easier for everything to connect properly. But in this case, we'll leave it the way it is for this demonstration purposes. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and take the end of my tarp shelter. I'm going to reposition the camera here. I'm going to go ahead and pull those back a little bit further out, so that way you guys will be able to see how this is going to look. So the first thing we want to do is we want to pull out our tent stakes. I'm actually going to go and hold on to one of them until I get the other one strapped down. So now we have both ends of our tarp setup And now, thanks to the Prusik nuts and the Lockset knot, we now have a lean-to shelter. Now again, I could have repositioned the tarp where instead of it being like this, I could attach another loop to the other end of the shelter. That did not cross my mind, but for demonstration purposes, this is perfect. But I am going to go ahead and change it just to make it more sensible and more understanding. So let's go ahead and do that now. What we're going to do here, I'm going to make one change though. I'm going to grab a carabiner from my quick setup and use that. I lost the toggle that I was using. So now we have a carabiner in the center to help keep the tarp right on the ridge line. Now, as you can see, got to reposition our camera again. If I were to sit down, I have plenty of room. Take my hat off. If I had a tarp with another tarp or my mattress, I could lay right here, still be protected. I can go further in. Another thing I can also go ahead and do as well is I can get me a good stick. And what I would do is I would take my knife, cut it off the end, round it over, and I can lean it up against the tarp to give me a place to sleep for the night, if I needed to. So that is how you use the Prusik knot, the lark's head knot, and the Fishman's knot to set up your tarp shelter with both the trucker's hitch, the bowline, and the marlin spike hitch. Now again, with the ridge line, when setting up your ridge line, you can use a carabiner, as I showed you with the other ridge line earlier, if you want to. But if not, if you can find a strong, sturdy piece of wood, that can definitely do the job for you. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I hope you got a clear understanding of how some of these knots are used in both camping and a survival scenario. If you have any comments or questions, please leave them down below. I enjoy reading them, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. And again, this video is in dedication to troop number 65105, my daughter's Girl Scout troop. And I hope you guys enjoy this video. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. Now go outside, have an adventure. So long.